Hello everyone, welcome. Today I will discuss about the most important DNA viruses. Okay. So I have a mnemonic for you, and I brought this mnemonic from First Aid 2015 edition to remember the names of the DNA viruses, and those are very happy viruses. So happy, so a lot of P and 2H. So for the first 2H you have the hepatna, the herpes, the adeno for the A, and for the 4 P's you have the Poxvirus, Parvo, papilloma, and Polyomavirus. So you have to actually repeat this for multiple times to remember all the names of DNA viruses. And as you know that the DNA inside your body is actually double-stranded, and so the DNA inside a virus is most likely to be double-stranded. But there is one virus, which is Parvovirus, has DNA, but that DNA is not double-stranded, rather it is a single-stranded DNA. And most of the DNA viruses have a genome which is linear, like that. So DNA is actually arranged in a linear fashion. But some viruses, like papilloma, polyoma, and hepatinoviruses, have a circular genome. And most of the viruses are icosahedral, so have 20 triangles arranged on the surface. But the pox virus has a complex structure. And as you have your DNA inside the nucleus, the DNA viruses will also like to go to the nucleus and replicate there. So this is general rule for most of the DNA viruses, except for pox viruses, because pox carries its own DNA dependent RNA polymerase, and that's why it can replicate inside the cytoplasm. And here we have the first group of the DNA viruses, which are herpes viruses. So herpes, the first part of the happy, H, herpes. And herpes viruses are enveloped, and herpes viruses actually get their envelope from the nuclear membrane of the cell that they infected, and it has a double-stranded DNA, and its DNA is linear. And we have the first subtype of herpes virus, which is herpes simplex virus type 1, and it can cause multiple diseases like gingival stomatitis, keratoconjunctivitis, inflammation of the cornea, inflammation of the conjunctiva, and herpes labialis. And one more important disease caused by herpes simplex virus type 1 is temporal lobe encephalitis. So it is the most common cause of sporadic encephalitis, and as the temporal lobe is involved, it can be associated with an altered consciousness or altered mental status, seizures, and aphasia. As you can remember from your neuroanatomy, that actually the 1x area is actually situated in the temporal lobe, and that's why you can have sensor aphasia. And if it involves the Broca's areas too, you can also have a motor aphasia. And herpes simplex virus type 1 is transmitted by respiratory secretion and sometimes by saliva, like during kissing. And this is a lesion of the herpes labialis, so it's a blister on your lips, also known as labium, and it's sometimes a painful blister. And here you have the keratoconjunctivitis, so inflammation of the cornea and conjunctiva. And here you have a spatial stained cornea, and you see some blue regions here and some green regions here. So the green regions, those regions are actually representative of the inflammation of the conjunctiva. Okay, and the inflammation of the cornea, and you can see surrounding the cornea that you have the conjunctiva, and it also seems red. So you have the keratoconjunctivitis. And here you have an MRI of a patient, and this is the right side, and this is the left side, and this is the frontal, this is the temporal, and this is the occipital lobe here. And you have inside the, especially in the right temporal lobe, you have some homogeneous opacity or density, and it is actually due to herpes encephalitis that involves the temporal lobe of the right side. And here you have another patient with same right-sided temporal lobe encephalitis due to herpes simplex type 1. And you see, you can compare, this is the left temporal lobe, this is the left temporal lobe, and this is the right temporal lobe, and especially the temporal pole and part of the temporal lobe is actually destroyed, and there is bleeding inside it, and this occurs due to herpes encephalitis. And here we have the second type of the herpes simplex virus, which is type 2, and it causes something called herpes genitalis. So it involves the genital structure most commonly, so below the waistline. And as a pregnant lady can also get infected with herpes simplex virus type 2, and when the baby delivers, when it passes through the birth canal, baby can also get the infection from his or her mother, and it can cause neonatal herpes. And genital structures are commonly supplied by nerves from sacral ganglia, and that's why herpes simplex virus type 2 can be latent in sacral ganglia, and it's commonly transmitted by sexual contact and parenterally, as I had mentioned. And here you can see a penis of a patient, and you see the vesicles which can be painful or itchy. And herpes simplex, you can identify them by culture from skin or genitalia, or you can do a PCR if someone presents with features of herpes encephalitis. Okay, so you can do PCR from the cerebrospinal fluid. And you can do another test, which is Zhang test. So first you have to do something called, you have to rupture a blister and take the smear of an open vesicle or blister, and actually then you have to detect multinucleated giant cells, and which are actually commonly found in herpes simplex virus type 1, 2, and Cytomegalovirus infection. So here we can see a positive Zhang smear, and positive Zhang smear would show some multinucleated giant cells. So here we have one, so one nucleus, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here you have another one. So those are positive Zhang smear present in type 1, 2, and also Cytomegalovirus. So you have the third virus in the herpes family, which is varicella zoster virus. So it actually causes two diseases. If there is primary infection, it will cause something called chickenpox. If there is reactivation after the primary infection, it will cause shingles, also known as zoster. But sometimes it can cause other diseases, like it can cause inflammation of the brain substances, encephalitis, and infection of the lung. And it can be latent in dorsal root ganglia or trigeminal ganglia. And if someone has a zoster or shingles, the most important complication will be post-herpetic neuralgia, and for which you will be using pregabalin. Okay, and it can be transmitted by respiratory secretions. It's actually a very infectious disease, or very transmitted. And you can see a child with lesions of chickenpox, primary infection, and you can see some papules and macules here, which will actually undergo crusting. Okay, and here you can see shingles. So this is due to reactivation of the previous infection with varicella zoster virus, and it actually involved the chest of a patient in a dermatomy manner. So those lesions will be vesicles and blisters, which will be very painful. Okay, and it actually involves in a dermatomal distribution. Very important to know. And here we have the fourth virus. So it is called the Epstein Barr virus. So it is the herpes virus type 4, and it can cause something called infectious mononucleosis. And as it's an infection, it will cause fever. And as the mononuclear cell reside in the mononuclear phagocytic system, there will be lymphadenopathy and hepatosplenomegaly. But Epstein Barr virus actually starts infection from your pharynx, so there will be pharyngitis too. So it actually like that. The patient has pharyngitis, and that's why he has fever. And then after pharyngitis, the Epstein Barr virus actually spread on to lymph nodes, and that's why it causes the lymphadenopathy, especially the posterior cervical nodes, and also ultimately lead to a hepatosplenomegaly. And it's actually commonly transmitted by respiratory secretions and saliva, and especially the saliva, because it's commonly seen in the teens who actually have the disease due to kisses. That's why it's called kissing disease. And those Epstein Barr viruses actually can infect the B cells through a CD marker, which is CD21. As you can remember from your immunology, the most common markers for B cell are CD10, CD19, CD20, and also in some cases CD21. And can you remember the markers for T cell? Very good. So CD3, CD5, and CD7. And when someone is getting infected by Epstein Barr virus, if you do a PBF or peripheral blood film, you can see some atypical lymphocytes. Those are not actually B cells, but those are actually reactive cytotoxic T cells. And you can detect the Epstein Barr virus serologically by doing a monospot test. and you will detect heterophile antibodies by agglutination of sheep or horse RBC. And Epstein Barr virus can cause some cancers, especially in sub-Saharan Africa or Saharan Africa. It can cause Burkitt lymphoma, also known as endemic Burkitt. And as you can remember, the non-endemic or sporadic Burkitt involves the abdominal regions, and the endemic Burkitt actually involves your jaw. So that's a very important differences. And also it can cause nasopharyngeal carcinoma, especially from patients in Chinese ancestry. And here you can see a patient. Most likely this patient has pharyngitis due to Epstein Barr virus, and then it caused posterior cervical lymphadenopathy, and maybe later this patient will also develop a hepatosplenomegaly. And here you can see the blood smear from the patient, and you can see some abnormal lymphocytes here. So the shape of the lymphocyte or morphology is distorted, and here is also another abnormal lymphocyte. So those are T cells. So these are T cells which are reactive, not the B cells. And the fifth type of the herpes virus are Cytomegalovirus. So Cytomegalovirus is very important to remember, especially for congenital infection. So the baby can get it from mother, and also it can cause a mononucleosis. But the difference between mononucleosis caused by Epstein Barr virus and Cytomegalovirus is that Cytomegalovirus will have a negative monospot test. It can also cause infection of the lungs, and very importantly, infection of the retina or inflammation of the retina. And this is very important, especially in case of AIDS patient. Okay, so we'll discuss about it later in AIDS. And if a cell is infected with cytomegalovirus, the cell gets larger and has something called an Owleye inclusion. And cytomegalovirus can be latent in mononuclear cell, and it can be transmitted congenitally, meaning transplacentally, and also by transfusion, sexual contact, saliva, urine, and transplant. Especially transplant is very important, because transplanted patients will have a very poor immunity, so they are immunosuppressed, and that's why cytomegalovirus can cause serious infection in those type of patients, like pneumonia and something like that. So here you can see some cells infected with cytomegalovirus and has some inclusions which look like Owleye. So Owleye inclusions occurs due to cytomegalovirus. So can you remember Owleye nucleus? Yeah. So you can have mirror image Owleye nucleus in very good Hodgkin's lymphoma. So those are called Ritz-Sternberg cells. But those are not Ritz-Sternberg cells. It will be found in Hodgkin's lymphoma. So you have the herpes simplex virus type 6, which will be causing roseola, but type 7 also can cause roseola. And roseola is a disease which can be manifested fast with high fever. Later, it can be associated with seizures and ultimately a diffuse macular rash. And it is also transmitted by saliva. And here you can see some diffuse macular rash of roseola. Maybe this patient had a period of fever followed by seizures, and now she's having a rash. And you have the last of the herpes virus, which is herpes virus type 8, and it is associated with Kaposi sarcoma, especially in immunosuppressed patients like HIV, AIDS, or transplant patients. So AIDS patient or transplant patients. And it actually is a neoplasm of the endothelial cell, and that's why it will be presented as a dark or violaceous plaques or nodules representing vascular proliferations, which can also involve GI tract and lungs. And commonly it is transmitted by sexual contact. And here you can see some dark and violaceous plaques or nodules on the skin of a patient, and it's actually due to Kaposi sarcoma. And here we have the second group of the Hep B virus, the Hepadna. So the Hepadna viruses are also enveloped viruses, dsDNA, which is actually partial, and the most important virus in this group is hepatitis B virus. It can cause either acute hepatitis or chronic hepatitis. And though it is not a retrovirus, but still it has reverse transcriptase. And we have the next group of the DNA virus, which is Adenovirus. So Hep B, HHA, adeno. So adenoviruses doesn't have any envelope like the previous viruses, because as you can remember from your past knowledge that the PAPs do not have an envelope. So the PAPs do not have an envelope, and the A here is actually for adeno. And adenovirus is dsDNA like all and have a linear genome. And the most common diseases it can cause are febrile pharyngitis, so it is one of the most common cause of sore throat, and also it is one of the most common cause of conjunctivitis, also known as pink eye. And along those, it can also cause hemorrhagic cystitis and pneumonia. And you have the next virus, which is the Hep P, so the first P, Parvovirus. It is non-enveloped because it is the part of PAP, P-A-P-P, part of PAP, and that's very important to know that it has a single-stranded DNA. So it's the only virus with the single-stranded genome, a single-stranded DNA genome, and the DNA is linear. And if a patient with sickle cell disease gets an infection with Parvovirus P19, it can cause aplastic crisis in this patient. And if a child is infected with Parvovirus, it will cause some rashes, especially on the cheeks and the other parts of the body. And the rash on cheek will appear as a slap cheek appearance. And that's what. And also, this disease is also called erythema infectiosum or FIP disease. And if a fetus is infected with Parvovirus, it can lead to destruction of the RBC, resulting in pure RBC aplasia and also some rheumatoid arthritis-like symptoms. Here you can see a child who has a rash on the cheeks, so rashes on both cheeks, looks like a slap cheek, and that's occurred due to Parvovirus infection, and it's also known as erythema infectiosum or FIP disease. Now we have another group of DNA virus, the Hep P. So we have undergone the HHA1P, and you have the second P here, the Papillomavirus. So there doesn't have any envelope, so it's a part of the PAP. So part of PAP, and it is a dsDNA virus like all other, and it can cause two main diseases. One is wart, another is cancer. So the strains that causes cancer are 16, 18, 31, 33. Okay, very important to remember. And here you can see some warts by HPV, so human papillomavirus. So the warts can be actually exerted if a patient is immunosuppressed, because the viral replication rate would be higher in immunosuppressed patients. And here you can see a cut section of a specimen of carcinoma of cervix. So here is the growth. So it can be either squamous cell carcinoma or it can be adenocarcinoma. Now you have the third P, which is Polyomavirus, and same, it doesn't have an envelope because it's a part of the PAP. Okay, so and also it has a circular genome like the Adenovirus and other viruses. So this is very important to know. And the two important viruses in Polyomavirus group are JC virus and BK virus. And JC virus causes something called a progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy or PML in HIV patients. And the BK virus infects the patients who are having a transplant, especially the kidney transplant, or especially transplant in other organ, transplant of other organs, but later it infects the kidney. So the JC virus will cause a junky cerebrum, meaning the PML, and the BK virus will cause a bad kidney in a transplant patient. So here we have some FLAIR images of a patient with progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy or encephaly or leukoencephalopathy. So here you can see some lesions here, 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 here. So some more lesions here, here, here. So multiple lesions, so multifocal lesions, which will be progressive. Okay, and that's why it's called progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. And here you have the next P, the Poxvirus, which are envelope virus, and those are double-stranded and linear, like all other most of the DNA viruses. And smallpox is one of the variant of one of the strains in the Poxvirus group, which was actually eradicated by use of live attenuated vaccine. And cowpox can cause something called the milkmaid blister. And another disease from the Poxvirus family is Molluscum Contagiosum. So it's actually a disease caused by Molluscum Contagiosum virus, and it causes flesh colored papule with central dimpling or amplification. So here you can see a patient with Molluscum Contagiosum lesion. So you can see a flesh colored papule or lesion, and in the center of the papule or lesion you can see a dimple or umbilicus like structure. So thanks for watching my video, and that's all from me about the most important DNA viruses. I'll come back later with a discussion on RNA viruses. Thanks for watching the video again, and stay tuned for more.